I'm not going to ask for hands, but I want you to think for a moment. Aspirations. Aspirations. Every single one in this room aspired to be something. I'm sure there's probably a lot of baseball players out there, there's a few ballerinas, I'm sure there's a few rock stars, basketball, volleyball, swimmers. We all had aspirations. We all wanted to do certain things. We were lucky in many ways that as we move on, we found mentors who basically helped us say, you know, Aaron, you're never going to be the center for the Knicks. It doesn't matter how hard you try. You're just not tall enough. Right? And I'm sure that a few people came to you and said, yeah, no cante. Don't see, man. Or hands or whatever it was. Let's spend some time finding out what the aspirations of our clients are. And let's help them realize, those who can realize them, and for those who can't, help them move on and take that energy into what they really can do, because there's in every agency out there, it doesn't matter how difficult or how much pain they may be, all you need to do is find that nerve, touch it, and make it happen. Gracias. Thank you.
And to close our panel, we have two speakers for the not-for-profit perspective. Denise Rosario, Executive Director of the Coalition for Hispanic Family Services, and Phil Superior, CEO, Executive Director of the Coalition of Behavioral Health Agencies.
Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. Leon's a tough act to follow. He's both challenged us and inspired us at the same time. Thank you. You're a tough act to follow. I know that it's been a long morning, but I'm going to ask you to keep your attention going, because I think that one of the things that I'd like to do is also challenge you and ask you to think about some things that we need to take out of this room and really take to the people who are not here but should be here. And I think it was Carmen who said earlier, look to your right and look to your left. I'm going to ask you to look to your right and look to your left and look behind you and see who's here, and then think about who's not here but should be here. Because when we see them, we should be saying to them, why weren't you at this conference? Why weren't you listening to about the needs in the Latino community? That having been said, what I'd like to do is focus on the challenges that are faced by a Latino community-based not-for-profit, such as the one that I operate, because I think we also need to be very concerned. I think that we need to look at who are our list of providers right now that are Latino, and how many of them may still be there in 2 years or in 5 years. Because the scene out there is changing quickly, and it is very difficult for us to survive under these circumstances. So let me face some of these challenges. First, let me say that, as I said, I operate a young Latino community-based organization. We're 21 years old. And the reason that I highlight those characteristics are because those are also risk factors. Like any small business, we look at how long they operate. And yes, we made it 21 years, but I'm not sure that we'll make it to 25. And we need to understand why that is the case. As a young organization, we have to be able to transition with the times, to meet changing demands, to raise the bar, and to constantly improve the quality of services. These are all vital attributes to the longevity and credibility of our organizations. At the same time, we need the resources and support that would allow us to be flexible and be able to change. As a Latino organization, while all of us in this room know the value of being a Latino organization in New York City, there are many who question our existence on a daily basis. They are often saying, what's any different from your organization as compared to any other? What do you do that's different from any mainstream organization? How are your services more effective? How are they less costly? What outcomes do you achieve? Lastly, as a community-based organization, the same kinds of how they impact the people you serve, or also how they impact the community itself. For example, in our community, we have an impact on the economy. We create jobs. We also have foster parents who spend their money in our community. We've been involved in the development of services. We've been involved in strengthening the community, whether it's through educational workshops or through advocacy, or simply by creating visibility for the community that we serve. And we've been involved in organizing through collaborations. An important question for all of you to think about is, who values the importance of services to Latino families, located within their own community and provided within the context of their own culture in a language that they understand? Who values that besides those of us who are in this room? These organizational characteristics may have been valued 20 years ago when everyone was talking about cultural competence and having a fair share, but in my experience, they are less valued now when the focus is on cost effectiveness, economies of scale, and program outcomes. And we need to create a voice around the value of Latino organizations. There are also challenges that we're all facing, and I would name a few of them. One of them is the need to become transparent, which I think is important and valuable. Another is the need to be transparent, the need to be cost effective. The other is to be effective in our services, and the last is around performance outcomes. I think being transparent is very important and very valuable, but it's also costly. And it is something that has come into the system and is a new challenge for organizations. There's a nationwide movement towards transparency. And with that, it takes a certain amount of infrastructure to be able to be more accountable, to be able to be more transparent. Think, for example, about, I'm sure you've seen recently in New York City, the restaurants all have a grade up in their windows. Even the fanciest restaurants have a grade up in their windows that say, you know, A for cleanliness and for meeting the requirements of the Department of Health. I would expect that at some point we're all going to have grades up on our doors when you come in, or on our websites. And think about it. Would you go into a restaurant that's rated with a C or a D? Will families want to come to an organization that has a C or a D? And I think this speaks to what Iran was saying, where not only do we have to provide great services, but we have to manage well, we have to be fiscally sound, we have to be accountable. The challenge there is that most of us don't have the flexible funding to support the infrastructure that would allow us to have the staff to look at these things, to look at data, to make sure that we are being financially accountable, to make sure that we have systems that collect data, that have information. We need to be able to do that, and we need the flexible funding to do that. Another example of the challenge, and I'm sure that Phil will probably speak to this, and we heard it earlier, is that the mental health system is going through major transitions. Restructuring around funding, restructuring around how services are provided, the Medicaid system is changing, and for us, we run a small Article 31 clinic. We can't keep up with the changes that are going on. The changes take place almost daily. And if you don't have the in-house expertise that can almost focus solely on that one issue, your survival is at risk. So we ought to look at who the players are today, because they may not be the players in a couple of years. Another issue is, it's great that there's so much accountability, but the number of audits that we face at one time, and I'm sure there are many of you that relate to this, all right, again, require a significant amount of infrastructure. Quick example, currently we are dealing with our annual independent financial audit, including an A133 audit, an ACS audit, DYCD audits for each of 7 contracts, a 401k audit, and of course the not-for-profit executive compensation audit, all at the same time. They require people and resources and leadership to get through those things, and to do them well, because if you don't do them well, then you start looking at those grades that look like C's and D's. And then nobody's saying, you know, they do really good services, but they're saying you got a C or a D, and we need to be concerned about that. Let me move quickly to challenge number 2, that really has to do with the provision of effective services and how we measure those services. We've had the good fortune to be doing quite a bit of work around performance management, but to be able to do that, you have to be able to collect data, you have to be able to understand the data, and honestly, you want to be in a position, I want to be in a position, where I But to do that, you need the infrastructure, you need the expertise within an organization that allows you to do something with that data, to make it meaningful, to be able to come back and talk about, some of the statistics of the information that Carmen shared with us in light of the work that we're all doing. Third challenge is cost effectiveness versus service effectiveness. How do we start measuring the value of our ability to engage families sooner, our ability to retain family and services, our impact on the well-being of communities, or the value of a culturally competent framework for the provision of services? We need to be able to measure those things, and we most likely need to do that in partnership with academia, so that there is credibility to the findings that we have, and so that our results are respected by the larger system. I would like to believe we could just say we believe it's worthwhile, but I'm finding that that's not enough, and we really need partnership with others. I'm sure I'm close to running out of time, so let me just say what my challenge is to all of you, the questions you should be thinking about as you leave the room. One is anyone talking about what's happening to community-based agencies of color, Latino and African American? I know in the child welfare field, which we are also involved in, we're down to, I believe, 3 agencies of color that are foster care agencies, and we're the only Latino foster care agency in New York City. We should be asking why, when still to this day, 98% of children in care are Latino. I'm sorry, are children of color. Has anyone looked at the agencies, the Latino agencies, and has looked at lost government funding in recent years? We lost 3 programs at the end of this fiscal year. Is anybody looking at what the impact has been to all of us? Has anyone looked at the proportion of funding that has been made available to Latino agencies in this current day? Back 20 years ago, people were talking about fair share. I'm not sure how much that still is the case. And lastly, how do we move from being engulfed in our own day-to-day survival to holding others accountable to ensure that the fastest growing population in New York City has services that meets our needs in a language that we and they understand, and in a location that is accessible and feels like home? I suggest again we look around the room, look at who is not here with us, and we take that message to them as soon as possible. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Philip Sapiria. I know many of you in this room, but while I was sitting in the 3rd row back there, I was looking at the name tags running across the table, and I realized that I was probably the only one unconnected physically from the social work profession. I've always felt as if I were a social worker. Some of my best friends are social workers. I have honored and celebrated the field of social work. I know from what I do what social workers do, and I just want to say I'm really honored to be here among you. So I've taken this degree, the Master of Arts in Teaching, which I got from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and I'm referring to it now as moving ahead together. I wish that Arlene Gonzalez-Sanchez had spoken after me, not before, because she left on such a positive note. We have challenges and we have opportunities. And I have to admit, quite honestly, that I see few opportunities. I'm focused on the challenges. I hate, in a way, to be the last speaker, because I'm afraid I'm going to leave you with a little bit of a negative sensibility around what's happening to us. But I'm going to try to put it into a context. So the context is this, and I think what's happening to us now in the behavioral health field, I forgot to mention my beloved coalition of behavioral health agencies. We represent about 130 mental health community-based service providers and addiction services, community-based addiction services providers mostly in New York City. We have a big clump in Westchester County, a couple in Orange County, and a couple in Suffolk and Nassau counties. Primarily New York City based. These are the community-based providers who live in the communities, who work in the communities, who work with the people who live in the communities. And so while I have a provider perspective, which is a word that's increasingly come under some attack, I operate always firmly under the philosophy that good quality care delivered by caring providers who know constituents is in the best interest of the consumers. And so that in a sense I'm here representing interests of consumers and providers whose interests I think are synchronous. The providers only, the distinction I guess for providers is that it's important to stay in business. And there is a business side to what we do, and the business side is figuring out how to provide those quality services. So we're in a particular moment in history in New York State and in this country in general. I'm focused on New York State and New York City, where $28 billion of fee-for-service Medicaid and behavioral health is moving in the next 3 years to managed care. Let me say that again. $28 billion of fee-for-service behavioral health money is moving to managed care in the next 3 years. It's going to be up to us in this incredibly telescoped time. My complaint is not the movement. My complaint is not about managed care. My complaint is only about the motivation, one, which is money. It's money-driven, first. And secondly, the telescope, the very fast amount of time in which we can do it. And I think that in effect, even with the smartest minds and the greatest intentions and the highest values, means that we're going to make mistakes, serious mistakes, that are going to impact our agencies, our communities, and the people we serve. The care that we're moving toward, as Ali pointed out to us, is integrated care. We cannot any longer think just about mental health or substance abuse services. We need to think about primary care, for that matter. We need to think about care that is integrated, because we learned that people with serious mental illness, people with chronic addictions, disorders, use enormous amounts of money in emergency room use, in inpatient use, around their physical health needs. So we have to figure out a way to develop a system that looks at the whole person and treats the whole person. Now, budget cuts are not affecting just Medicaid. As you know, the city is doing it, what it calls euphemistically, its PEGs, programs to eliminate the gaps, which in my language means cuts. The state is cutting local assistance dollars as we speak. So all of those programs, even the non-Medicaid programs, are being cut, and agencies like Denise's and yours, who represent and work in agencies, are being challenged this very minute. So we're having to deal with the new set of acronyms, the MRT, the WHO, the Health Home, the OMIG, the OIG, the Affordable Care Act, which is ACA, etc. There are tons of them. They impact incredibly on us and will impact even more as time goes out. And it behooves you to know what all of these things are. Arlene, we're lucky that Arlene Gonzalez-Sanchez is one of the co-chairs of the MRT. But believe me, the MRT, just keeping up with the various subcommittees and the various branches of the MRT working on different aspects of cutting and moving toward managed care, etc., is incredibly difficult and requires enormous energies and time. I urge you to do as much of that as you can. I myself have served on the Behavioral Health Subcommittee, which is co-chaired by Mike Hogan and Deputy Mayor Linda Gibbs, and then also on the Children's Subcommittee of that subcommittee, working with Gail Mayworth, who's chairing that. And everyone is working very hard, again in a very short time, to try to come up with some answers that will serve us into the future. I'm worried about changes in the professional workforce in our field. I'm worried that because of the press of finances, that agencies will move from full-time with benefits workforce to a part-time workforce without health care and without benefits. I think that is a huge challenge. If I were a social worker today, looking around the world for a place for a job that satisfies my values as a social worker, but also satisfies my need to make a living for myself and my family, would I choose the behavioral health field? I'm not sure that I would. There are shifts now in foster care that are going to impact the mental health agencies, the care of foster care children, because fees are being shifted away from the fee-for-service Medicaid system toward the foster care agency, who will decide how folks get care. I think, Bob, if you're listening, that has enormous impact on the corporate compliance waiver issues. It has enormous impact on what is a licensed clinic and what is not a licensed clinic, and who can provide care and who may not provide care. The new regs, I should have added them to the acronyms of what you need to use, the 599 regs and the 822 regs, which we now live under as providers, have not been passed by the federal government. The state plan amendments have not yet been approved, and in the mental health world since October of last year, almost a year, maybe more than a year now, our folks have been sort of operating in a schizophrenic world and billing under the 588 maybe, and providing services under 599, or billing under 599 and providing services under 599. But in the end, there will be a judgment day, there will be a reconciliation, and in some cases, folks are going to lose a lot of money, and maybe in some lucky cases, folks will gain some money. And of course, we have PROS, which we've been working on forever, personalized recovery-oriented services, and that, in my view, will not survive into the world of managed care. Look, I could go on and on. I think there are enormous challenges. This afternoon, a group of us are meeting to talk about some of the aspects of health homes, the fact that the financing and everything is being run through the plans, and I don't believe for a minute that the managed care organizations have an interest at heart, the interests of our folks, of our agencies. I too see an enormous threat to minority-led agencies, to people, to small and medium-sized community-based agencies. There was a day when the value of serving special needs, of serving special communities, of having linguistic and cultural competence would overcome other values, or would be weighed in the same way that other values would be weighed in determination of whether agencies should continue, where aid would come to help them continue, all the things that Denise mentioned. I don't think that that exists anymore. In an age where money is the driver, in an age where size is now seems incredibly a determining factor, I think that the small and the medium-sized agencies are at risk. So we have threats to the workforce, threats to the minority-led agencies, enormous threats around and challenges around technology. All the money for technology, for coming up with new electronic health records and other internet improvements to communicate and be able to provide the information around integrated care. All that money is going to primary care doctors and to hospitals. None of it's coming into the behavioral health field. I think we need to be totally concerned about that because we cannot operate in the new generation without expertise and wisdom around technology, around, as you said, around metrics, around data and analytics, and finally around the kind of infrastructure that's necessary. So I'm thinking, what can we do to help? Because we're an association, and that's sort of our goal. And the best that I can come up with is, first of all, knowledge. Know what's going on. Know who's doing what to you and to whom. Learn those acronyms and find out what they are. Take advantage of all of your associational involvements and make sure that you have as complete knowledge of the world that we're operating in. And then I would say to the Latino Social Work Task Force, I would say to all of us in our work modes and in our personal associational modes, we need to find collaborations, we need to find alliances, we need to find partnerships, unlikely ones, outside of ourselves, if we're going to survive And if we're going to move into the new world in a way that's healthy to our organizations, to our communities, and to the people we serve.
Thank you. We have a round of applause for the entire first forum. And I know you're hungry, but this is your chance. We have 2 mics. Have you thought of any questions, comments you'd like to make on anything I said, Carmen Nazario said, the panel said? Please step forward. We have plenty of time before lunch, and lunch will be served right in here. Yes, Anderson. Can I introduce to you the new Vice President of the Puerto Rican Family Institute, a Hunter graduate, Anderson Torres.
I understand everything that's been said, and recently Puerto Rican Family Institute has taken several trips to meet with key stakeholders, and it's pretty distressing to see and offensive the disregard towards cultural competency, as we have clinicians that mirror the community and the constituents, and that's totally being disregarded. There is a fragmentation and competition that may be perceived by other entities, but we have to definitely unite together because numbers tell a story. And we do phenomenal work, but I don't think that we do a good enough job in the collective to really report out on the wonderful work that we do and the impact that it demonstrates. Whether it is reducing a hospitalization, unifying a family, and providing quality type service, we're in a danger zone. And we need to strategize quickly because the ground is shaking and some of us may be falling through. So I just want to add on to what was said.
And adding on to what you said, we are filming this conference. We have a website, and we need to use the technology that everyone else is using to know and share and announce and scream and yell about what is going on in our communities and the good work that we've heard about that's been going on. Does anybody want to respond to Anderson?
Let me add a comment to that, because I think that you've all heard the word silos, right? Everybody knows the silos? Well, let's take a look at social work. Mental health organizations, foster care organizations, child care organizations, community organizations, housing, job training, education, and youth. How often do we talk to each other? How often do we come together and say, hey, these are the same customers. They are the same customers. They're in mental health, they're job training. So that we need to sort of find a way to become more comprehensive in terms of who's out there. There is a movement right now. You're going to see it very soon. We're doing it in Head Start right now. It's called recompetition. We're going to start recompeting programs. That's pretty much in the cards. Eventually, it will not be sufficient to say, I've been at this for 20 years in this corner, and this corner belongs to me, and therefore I got to continue to get funded. That's not going to be the case. So the boards, the staff, the communities have to be ready to make the changes necessary to make sure these organizations continue to exist, continue to flourish. The idea that we're going to continue to get funded forever is over. We're moving in that direction. I think you're going to start seeing it. We're also going to start seeing some business organizations coming in. I have in Region 2 a for-profit organization that is now funded by the federal government to serve children in Head Start. That's what the future looks like. So it's important that the boards, the members of the community, the university, all of the leadership come together, because all of these services are interrelated at the same time.
Yes. Hello.
I'm Yolanda Pimario. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Social Service Employees Union. Local 371. We represent over 16,000 members who provide social services in New York. Some of my members are here. Hello, everybody. I have a comment, and that is in reference to the language that we use and what that message is. In particular, Mr. Rodriguez, the use of the word customer versus the use of the word client. While you were speaking, I sat down and Googled the word customer versus client. Webster's Dictionary states that a customer is one that purchases a commodity or service. A client is one that is under the protection of another, a person who engages the professional advice or services of another. We represent workers that are job opportunity specialists in the job centers, as you're aware of. And they refer to them as customers. And we need to know the root of where that came from. And it was during welfare reform that they changed the word from client to customer. I have had a major issue with the word, the usage of the word customer, because I believe that when people come for services, especially the people that we service, they need more than just, the economic, financial need. They are, to me and to most of my members, clients and our customers. So I would like for you to address that because you've used that over and over again. Thank you.
Certainly, I'd love to do that. I was the branch chief of the Migrant Head Start program in Washington, cover over 42 states in this great nation. And so I work with farmers, people who spend their day in a farm, picking up tomatoes, and potatoes, and celeries, watermelons, some of them are out here killing chickens also. Well, all kinds of hard work. The reason I use the word customer is that, to me, a customer is someone who can go someplace else. The tendency, and I say this to my agencies all the time, I used to tell the same thing to the farm workers. Would you buy a tomato that's rotten? Since you picked it, would you buy it? No, you want the best tomato you can get. At times, the idea is that the client is, you're here, you didn't burn on us, you have nothing else, there's no other place you can go. That's why I use that word customer. The customer can go someplace else. And I think that, not trying to be negative in terms of the use of the word, is that our clients, our customers, our people, ought to be treated like people that could go someplace else. The idea that I'm going to go to an agency and sit for 4 hours or 5 hours before somebody comes to see me, to me, as a social worker, is unacceptable. And that customer, client should be able to go someplace else if the services there are not too hard. And that's why I do it.
Can I just add one thing to that? Because it's interesting because we've been having a debate in our agency about language. And language is incredibly deficient, at least the English language is. And so for years we called our clients and patients. And then we decided, led by the consumer movement, this is me, the recipient movement, we were led to see that client and patient medicalized the services that we were delivering that were not always about medical things. So we changed our language and talk about consumers and providers. But consumers and providers are kind of objectifying terms, right? We do much more than provide services, right? We help people, we care for people, we sympathize with them, we resonate to their problems, etc. We guide them, and it's true that people have to have choices. But I think that this notion of customer versus consumer versus client versus recipient is a way for us to try to find our way into the new recovery-oriented universe that we're moving into behavioral health care, and to try to find language that is both empowering for the person who receives care and empowering for the person who is imparting care and guidance and so forth. So I don't think there's a single answer to your question.
Well, maybe we should just ask our clients what they want to be called in terms of receiving services from us. Okay, can I try this side of the room for a change? Okay, let's go here. Helga?
My name is Elba Montalvo, and I'm the president of the Committee for Hispanic Children and Families. And I'm really talking to the audience. I want to thank the panel for excellence. Thank you. Recently, we were meeting, a group of us met with the Department of Health and Human Services in Washington, as we've done for the last, I don't know how many years, more than I can count, to try to get them to listen to the needs of our community. And I came back so angry. Well, I usually, when I'm disappointed, comes out in anger first. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to go back and try to do something about it. And I do want everyone here to think about, because we all talk about the economy of this country and how recent, in times right now, there is less funding for social services. There's no question about that. But even within that, I mean, I just mentioned how much money they give away in Head Start, and how many billions?
$8 billion now.
God, I'm $8 billion. That's only Head Start. So my point is, to make it short, is there is money there that our community, year after year, does not get any equitable share based on our needs. It is outrageous that the HHS, that gives so many billions of dollars